welcome to The Highway, episode, not going to say it, because once again, I'm told not to say that, because we have no idea what order we're going to release these in. This is the third podcast, right? It's me?
Yes.
That we've done off-site. This one is in Kansas City, and we are in a hotel room at the Sheraton at the Policeman's Ball, right?
Yeah.
So
Policemen
tonight,
don't have balls.
policemen policemen don't. Yes, we have a guest on here.
Do pigs have balls?
I can tell this is going to go really good immediately.
We're definitely already on
This is going right where we need it to go. So yeah, off-site, but got one prior guest, one new guest who's going to be kind of our main topic of this potty. But we have the Smee is here, and then we have Trom.
Back, baby.
He's back.
Back, baby.
Yeah, Trom is back.
Clean set of pants.
Which I'm going to say, clean set of pants. If you've heard the other episode, we know that Trom often does not have a clean set of pants.
It happens.
Bird is not here. Bird could not make it. Once again, I'll say that he died, since every episode that he can't make, we say that he died somehow, because most likely he is
tragic
dead.
event.
Yeah. But Smee's here. Smee, you doing good?
I'm doing great.
All right, so she's going to be here with any sort of questions that we have. She's a subject matter expert in nothing other than Googling things that we need Googled.
Subject matter expert in Googling.
Yeah. And Trom, how's it going with you?
Hey, glad to be here, baby. Glad to be here.
You are how many bush lights deep at this point?
2 bush and a tall boy.
2 bush and a
4.
tall boy. So, okay.
4.
All right, good. All right.
Math checks out on that.
Feeling good?
Hey, this. I'm just greasing the tracks.
Greasing the tracks.
I mean, it's. I still got like 12 more hours.
All right. I have a feeling this is going to go great.
Yeah.
All right, then we have our a guest that I've been excited about. Talked about him on the very first episode, and I said we were going to have him on, though I didn't even ask him.
Yeah, that's bold.
Yeah, I just thought that he would say yes, and he did. So here we are. Appreciate him coming out because it's a Saturday, so taking time out of his day, and we're just going to go with Greg.
I really now am regretting not having a better code name.
I mean, we can go with like G-Dog, G-Man.
G-Unit.
G-Unit, yeah. That's probably pretty good.
G-Unit.
G-Unit.
Get your ass in the car.
So, are you going with G-Unit? Greg?
Greg's
right?
fine.
All right.
Greg's fine. It's outed. I'm already out.
Yeah, he's outed. I go by my name, so it is what it is at this point. But so I'm excited to have Greg here.
Out, so.
What's that?
I said we know you're out.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's not like the connection's not going to be made. So excited to have Greg here in his area. I know Greg through work. Always excited when he's around. It's a good time, wealth of knowledge. I enjoy his views on leadership. I enjoy his views on policing in general. So super glad that you are.
Thanks, man.
Super glad you're here.
I'm excited to be here. I love watching. One thing, watching you instruct. It's
cool.
It's a really cool thing, and instructing in police is really hard to do because you're dealing with all these personalities that think that they maybe know how to do it better.
Sure.
But you present it in such a way that's like, hey, I'm not anybody but me, and if you have something different, we can discuss that. I watch how you treat people. It's always awesome. And I call them Gun Show when I'm walking around the academy. I'm like, "What's up, Gun Show?"
That's true. Yeah.
Everybody hates that.
I can't stand
so
it.
mad.
I
He goes
run
home
away.
and cries every night.
I don't look at the agenda and see when he's there. Then I go up to make sure.
Seek out that.
Yeah.
Well, he goes and changes shirts. And he comes
Bang down 100 push-ups.
Do a couple push-ups.
On the note of shirts, because when we were talking about the shirts we gave you guys for being on the podcast, we asked what size you would need.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, he's probably my size, so like maybe a large. And I'm like, but does he wear tight clothes? Or what size is he really?
Just saying.
Your size is a little skewed from...
He went with a large, though. I called it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was fine. But I had to
called it.
clarify because, baby gap is...
It's my thing. I get it.
Thing.
Yep. Gotta have. So that's Trom digging into his next bush. But no, I appreciate you saying that, Greg. Awesome. Also enjoy watching you instruct every time. Comes into the or does a lot of new hire. I'll just say new hire. I'll keep it at that.
Yeah.
New hire training, and everybody always loves it, and nothing but positive reviews for you.
So what kind of training does Greg?
So yeah, I think that's what we get into is maybe tell us who you are and maybe what you do now, kind of your career path, and we'll go from there. If that sounds good.
Sounds good. So, I started out here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. I came from a small town. So
where'd you, or if you don't like North Missouri
I grew up
or
in Macon, Missouri, 5,000 people.
Okay.
we had 2 traffic lights at the time that I was left there. And I come to Kansas City, and I'm like, what did I get into?
So this was your first assignment
Yeah.
here? Okay.
Yeah. So my wife's originally from here, and so that worked out well that we got to come back. So what was funny is I came out, and I was with my FTO, and he's like, so what do you want to get into? And I'm like, let's do drug interdiction. And he's like, oh, we don't do that here.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, what? I was really disappointed because I grew up, in the agency, and I always followed people's careers a lot like kids would follow baseball players.
Sure.
I thought I'd see these guys knock down amazing loads of dope, off of like stopping cars for 5 over or something like that. I'm like, how did they do that? And I thought that's what I want to do with my career. So I got into it, came out on the road, and they're like, no, we don't do that here. I'm like, that's crazy. And then I got my first, big drug seizure. It was like a couple pounds of mushrooms and some meth and ecstasy and stuff.
Now, was that on FTO?
No, it was like a couple months after getting off FTO.
Okay.
And my sergeant's like, whoa, that's a career stop. And I'm like, holy cow, man, I got like 30 years to go. I
Sure.
Cruising to retirement, baby.
You're done.
Off of one stop,
You're
baby.
done.
Get
I'm like,
promoted.
I hope that's not it. And so it was absolutely,
Yeah.
a luck scenario right there for sure. And then I got another seizure at one point, and my sergeant's like, man, that's a career stop. And then I started thinking, man, how can I make this luck repeatable?
Sure.
And so I started bothering a lot of people across the country that were really good at doing that stuff. This guy named Sean Smart from the Ohio State Highway Patrol, he was just so gracious with his knowledge. And he actually grew up in Boonville, Missouri. So I picked his brain all the time. I was always bugging him. And anyway, so I started focusing on driving behaviors of people, and started recognizing that's what led me into success, was focusing on that.
Sure.
So, furthermore, it was like, man, it's not race, age, ethnicity, nothing like that. It's focusing on people's behaviors. And so I started doing that, and it was something I really wanted to do, and eventually I got onto an interdiction team. It's just me.
Can I ask you how long it took you to get onto the interdiction team?
Like 10 years. So I'm like,
Okay.
10 years into my career. I had gone through like working on the road, and doing patrol stuff, and then I went into a commercial vehicle enforcement assignment, which
Probably pretty lame.
I hated it.
Yeah, wait a second.
Pretty lame.
I was getting excited then when I heard commercial vehicle. Oh, okay, here we
They
go.
sold it as an interdiction thing to me, and I was like, yeah, man, I'm down to
Get you
clown.
every time
Okay.
that way.
Yeah.
So we're talking inspections and stuff at that point? or-
Right,
Okay.
right. And so I was really stoked to do that, and it panned out nothing like that. And I had a terrible leader.
And how long were you on that?
1 year.
Oh, damn.
The
It
training
doesn't
was,
take long, to realize that,
It
yeah,
sucks.
I had
especially if you
training
have
for
terrible leadership,
3 months was how long the training was, and I came out and I had this terrible leader who was constantly bouncing what his objectives were, like, no, we're not going to do that now, we're going to do this, we're going to focus on this, we're going to focus on that, and it was so frustrating. Then I had an opportunity to get promoted right where I lived, so I decided to step out and get promoted. And then at that point, I applied for the interdiction team, and man, that was a great 10 years. So I did that for another 10 years
Okay.
after that.
Okay. I knew you were on the interdiction team for a while.
Yeah.
Didn't know how long. 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Because and if you don't know Greg, or if you don't know Greg, how I know him is you taught, I think, in my academy too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
And you're known statewide, at least through our agency,
Oh,
as
absolutely.
interdictor, like
Extraordinaire.
yes.
I would never
extraordinary.
thought. I would never thought that.
No,
Because,
totally. So if you have interdiction questions, everybody tells
That's who
us
you
to
call.
call you.
Yep,
Yeah,
email.
without a doubt.
Well, I'm happy to answer those questions, but every time I talk to somebody from across the state or other areas of the country, I'm always learning from what they've just done. It's
Sure.
like when I hear somebody gets a big load or a really awesome arrest of like interdiction for protection of children or something, I'll call them up and like, hey, what'd you see? What got you into this? What can we do to replicate this success? And that I'm always a student of the game, and it's so exhilarating to me to find concealed criminal activity. And
So I guess I'm going to provide the civilian viewpoint.
Yeah, because
in
you're
this
the
one.
only non.
So could we explain a little bit like what an interdiction team does, or kind of what the
Yeah.
scope
So
is?
it's essentially what interdiction does is we patrol the roadways looking for people who are engaged in criminal activity and using the roadways to further that criminal activity.
Okay.
And so I like to say that criminal interdiction is not just drug interdiction, it's criminal interdiction.
Sure.
Really focus on that. And I always like to say that I'm an equal opportunity asshole arrester.
Yeah,
And-
I like that.
Yeah. So that way the people...
It's a sticker idea too.
Yeah,
you should
it
jot
is.
that down. I think you get
Somebody needs to
60%
take it.
of all sales. I think that's how that goes.
No, I just keep it all, man. I think everybody needs to know that, we're out there to find anybody that's trying to victimize our community in
Sure.
some way. So I enjoyed the heck out of interdiction. And I had a great partner. He taught me a lot. And I credit, Brooks McGinnis, I'll say his name,
Sure.
for teaching me how to swim. And, man, he was just so patient with me. And I think everybody needs a good mentor in their career.
yeah.
And I consider him to be one of those guys. But he had the dog, and we just would roll up and down the highways, and we got cool assignments to other parts of the state. We got to see what things were like in different areas, and we just had a blast for 10 years.
Okay. Yeah, you guys hooked a lot of people. Again, before my time, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. So what year did you start real quick?
So with the agency in 2001,
Okay.
and then started doing interdiction in 2010.
Dang. Okay. 2010. Yeah, and I'll say you and Brooks, from my experience, those are the names that always come up. Right.
What's interesting is, like, in our area, we didn't have that reputation. And
Really?
In our area, there wasn't a team like that.
Sure.
It was always someplace that was done someplace else.
Gotcha.
And we're like, man, we got to change that, because we know that we've got major interstates that come through our area, and there's criminals going up and down those highways every day. And we partnered up, and we just had a blast.
Okay. So criminal interdiction, which I think probably the main thing to point out, is beyond just a ticket, right? So I think
Right.
a lot of people are focused on tickets or meeting. And I'm not going to say the word quota. That's not what I mean, because we don't have.
Well, get
that,
your
but-
stops in.
Yeah,
get your stops in. Write your couple
tally
speeding
mark,
tickets.
tally. Your tick mark.
Work your
Yeah.
crashes.
Right. I mean, so do you think that's the main part of success from the interdiction standpoint, is not worrying about a tick mark? You're looking beyond just getting. What am I trying to say? I guess tick mark. I'm going to stick with that, right?
Yeah, so, starting out, I always tell people, when you're starting out, you just need to put a lot of cars on the shoulder.
Right.
And you start to learn, because I always tell people, you don't know what normal is or abnormal is until you know what normal is. And if you can figure out what normal is, that abnormal is going to stick out.
Sure.
I mean, just like somebody walking into your house and farting. You're like, somebody dropped out.
Sure.
Somebody
That
dropped
smell
out.
normally isn't here. I like that.
And so it just sticks out that much. So it's like, I would not get off the interstate for anything.
Okay.
I wouldn't stop to eat. I wouldn't stop to. I would piss on the shoulder. It just didn't matter.
So that's a fun game I still play.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
How close to getting caught can I do
Yeah.
it?
Can you get?
Yeah, it's like. And then you forget you turn your camera off. And it's
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
catching every bit of it.
Yeah,
Like,
I've learned the key that with a Charger is you pop the trunk in the back, because then it blocks the in-cabin camera
Yeah,
for seeing. Because
yeah.
I peed behind the Charger before,
Yeah.
and it caught me.
Yeah.
So you got to pop that trunk. That's what I did.
I'd always open my doors, front and passenger.
Oh, yeah.
Back and front, and I piss right there between the doors.
You
act like
you're
you're leaning in?
reaching
Yeah,
in
yeah,
for
like
stuff.
so you just splatter it all over your boots.
it's
I'll just get my notebook back here.
Yeah, no big deal.
Don't
Yeah.
stop.
Okay.
And then you go back into your car and you're like, my camera's on.
Oh yeah.
And you go back and review it, and you're like, how bad is it? And you're looking at it, you're like, the camera does not add 10 pounds.
It does not add. It does not add a couple inches. Let's just say that.
He's a grower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I would focus on staying out there as much as possible, and I encourage other people to do the same thing, because we're looking for that one car that's going to be driving by. You're looking for that split second that you have somebody right in front of you at 70 miles an hour and catching that reaction. And so if you break off the interstate and you're going to hang out and get coffee with the zone for an hour, then
Sure.
you go and eat lunch for an hour, then you go type reports for an hour, you're missing out on that. So pretty
Yeah.
much half your shift spent doing other things. And I wanted to make sure that my full 8 hours was going to be spent watching that traffic.
I think that's spot on, man. That's what. That's I won't
Dog
say
being
my
a
philosophy.
dog.
Yeah, dog being a dog. I
Dog
like
being
that.
a dog.
So going off what you just said,
Thank you.
is my first evaluation was I didn't spend enough time with my zone because I didn't go eat with them and stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go. Not that I didn't like them or anything, but I wanted to spend my 8 hours stopping cars, right, and looking for something.
I had the same criticism.
So it's interesting you say that.
And my answer to that was always when I was getting criticized for that, because it came up in my evaluations also. I said, I'll hang out with you guys when you're backing me up.
Sure.
And that sounds really cocky.
No, it's
but
not.
I said, when we're stacking bundles on the shoulder, we can get our picture together and remember how
cool
fucking awesome
sure.
that was. Sorry.
Yeah.
How awesome this was. And
Preach, baby.
Well, yeah, man, you're just. This is
Goosebumps.
why we had them, man. I'm telling you,
Goosebumps.
I knew it. I knew we had to have them.
Oh.
I love that.
so I really I started to see the culture changing at that point in time, because I would hear people in my old area talking about, hey, there's an expired plate, here's a good 10, 20 over car or something like that. And then when people started working around Brooks and I, they would start hollering out, hey, they had a good reaction from this person.
Okay.
They started calling out behaviors.
Okay.
And because I think a lot of people, in fact, I just had court this week where a defense attorney was challenging me on, hey, isn't it true that you stop cars with tinted windows that have nice rims and stuff like that on it? I'm like, that might be true for some people, but that's not true for me.
Okay.
Because, maybe you'll get something out of that, like a felon with a gun or
Sure.
something like that, warrant suspended driver or something, but I really want to see that reaction. And people that are engaged in major criminal activity are tempted to conceal it. They're not going to flaunt that. And I think that when you start focusing on behaviors, you're just really going to open up. And I always tell people, it's like looking at one of those magic eye posters.
Yeah.
Like eventually you'll see the
Where you
image.
see the 3D thing.
Yeah, we have to go
Okay.
cross-eyed for a second.
Yeah.
And
Man, that
pull it
makes
out.
sense. I like that.
Yeah, so if you have somebody show you the tricks on seeing that magic eye photograph and be able to see that 3D image, that's like what Brooks did for me.
Okay.
It's like, if you focus on this, that image will appear, and then you just can't stop seeing it.
Man, you're right. Yeah, you look at the same picture, you see it again. Man, that's awesome.
But I'm looking at the rest of the agency, or everybody's got different goals and objectives and things that make them happy in their career, and I encourage everybody to pursue that. But I'm looking at it as I really had a lot of fun attempting to locate people engaging in concealed criminal activity and trying to find them. But whatever it is, I just wanted those people to have the passion about it. But that magic eye thing, people understand that. It's just frustrating to me that people don't get that mentorship through their career to experience that. Because I know they want to, right? And so in 2016, we had some good leadership that's like, hey, we're spending a lot of money on sending people to other trainings, and they're coming back and they're not producing. So we want you guys to put together a training that is relevant to our specific agency and our policies, and put that training on for our people.
Now, are we talking at the new higher level at this point?
No, this point in time, it was the people that have been on for a while.
Okay.
So we already we would seek out those people that had an interest in criminal interdiction, people that kind of showed a propensity for it.
Is that the criminal patrol
Yeah,
class
that's the
or
criminal
whatever?
patrol class,
All right,
yeah.
I've sat through that. Yeah, that's very good.
So it's we put that together, and I became the coordinator for that class, and I would just try to draw the talent from all around the state.
Yeah.
And get them to come in and take the class and just really expand their capabilities. And it was always awesome because we'd have guys drive home from the training, and I'd get a phone call while I'm driving back from Jefferson City, and they're like, bro, I just hit this felony warrant on a behavior.
Nice.
And I just got this off of, seeing this guy react to my presence like this. And
Is that a two-day class?
that is a
1-day class?
5-day class.
5 day. Okay,
Yeah.
shoot.
So
Okay.
we break it down chronologically. So it's like, first off, I want you to have the mindset of criminal patrol, what that requires, and that's where we're talking about pissing in the median and eating.
Right.
You're bringing your lunch.
Being
which-
a dog, yeah.
Yeah, it really is, because I think that you got to have your mind right first off before you can do any of this stuff, and then we go from there into tactics for criminal patrol, maybe how we set up different things that you might see around the country, all the way from mobile patrol to stationary patrol to ruse checkpoints to hotel motel, train interdiction, bus interdiction, which are all things that I ended up doing later in my career. But then we go into talking about behaviors, and we're talking about that fight or flight response, the limbic brain response that people have to the presence of law enforcement, and sorting those out from other people that are traveling down the interstate. Because everybody freaks out when they see a cop and going a little bit over the speed limit. But when you've got that person that's already traveling at or below the speed limit, they see you and they slow down a little bit further. And one of my favorite things to do is stand outside my car and just watch.
Just like the interstate, just eyeball, Dukes up just as they pass, just flexing at them.
Takes a swing at them as they drive by.
Post it up,
With your medium shirt.
Exactly. Nice tailored
Just
shirt.
daring someone to look at you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we would just stand outside of our cars and just look at people as they go by. But you got to think that the one person that's traveling from point A to point B to continue their criminal activity, and now on the course of this trip, the one fucker they're concerned about is now sitting in the median, standing there, not running a radar gun or anything, and they're looking intently at you. You're gonna have.
That's like divine.
I know.
That's like God
I don't want to drive home.
I know. I'm sitting here like
I would roll my car.
Immediately crash.
I'm not doing these activities, but I'd be like, what the fuck is going on?
But you're looking at me.
Yeah,
You know,
like
just
I'm
like
like,
you just looked at me.
what's
12 times
happened?
on the interstate.
It's those other guys that are driving by and they're like. They've been driving through all of Kansas looking nothing but cornfields for all this time, and then they get to Missouri and they see this trooper standing in the median. And they're like, they don't want to look at him all of a sudden. They want to look over this cornfield they've seen for the last 400 miles. Or like Brooks would have his dog out and his dog be on the end of his leash taking a shit, and everybody else driving by is like, oh, that's adorable, trooper dog taking a shit, and then you get that one guy that wouldn't even, he would just freak out. He wouldn't even look at that dog. He'd be like.
Like an intimidation factor, right? That's going to divide people out. Whereas me, I would just be like, well, what's going on there? And then just keep going about my business.
Yeah, it's my filter for 100%. So I'm not going to stop you. But if I do, and we'll move into that aspect of the training, is then once you select the vehicle, and I show them videos of the cars that I've stopped and what they're doing as they're going to the shoulder. So like the long stop, when people take a forever long time to stop. And we break that down of what they're doing. But the long stop's a pretty indicative thing of somebody that's clearly concerned about what's getting ready to happen. And as I'm talking about this, I'm talking about building that probable cause pizza. So, I've seen that reaction. That's me rolling out the dough. Then they have another driving behavior after I pull out of the median to try to make contact with them. That's another piece of the probable cause pizza.
And the sauce.
Right? I'm not an interdictor, but that's got to be some sauce.
Throw the sauce on there. Now I put them on the shoulder, and they're taking a long time to stop. That's a little bit more cheese on there, throwing the toppings on there at that point in time. And then I get there and I make contact with them, and the oven, now sliding this whole pizza.
Damn, we're about to cook this thing. Okay, I'm getting excited to stop talking about it.
So I'm going to cook them, and I'm going to cook them with about 5 questions. And it's rapid assessment. It's nothing that if I stopped you and you're just going down the interstate and you're doing nothing, I would hope that you'd be able to talk to Ryan and say, I just got stopped by Greg and he was really cool, and you didn't feel like you were being interdicted. So I'm not asking I'm not acting like it's an interrogation. I'm not doing the trooper knife hand and hat brim on and everything like that. But it's what I'm really trying to cover is where are you coming from, where are you going to, how long you been there, what was the purpose of your trip, and then what do you do for a living. So those 5 questions all come up during my interview. And typically I can get those questions rolling with one question, which is, what are y'all doing today?
Sure.
And then they'll let me know. And then, I talked in the class about the quality of those answers and things that drug traffickers are going to have to tell me. Because you have to lie about one or all of those questions if you're engaged in criminal activity.
Get your car. Let's go. Yeah. I'm going right now. We're doing this
Where
right
are you going?
I don't know. Interstate. We're taking Greg with us.
We're doing citizens arrest tonight.
So as you sort through those questions, you got to lie about one or all of those of those answers. And so I also want people to pay attention to body language, the quality of their answers, and what they're doing during the course of that the questioning.
Sure.
And I'm doing this all while conducting the business related to the traffic stop. But if you're an innocent person, I'm going to hear truthful answers. I've made enough of these car stops in my career to know what's normal versus abnormal. I know the quality of responses I should be getting. But these people are just melting. Like I'm asking them, like I have a gun to their head.
Right.
And they're just melting. And they just can't withstand that pressure. And so then at that point in time, we go into talking about getting consent for search and all the case law that goes along with everything related to interdiction.
Sure.
And that's where I think we end up failing a lot of times, because I look at like supervisors and stuff that have guys that come back from this class and they're like, "Oh, you can't do that," and
Oh shoot. Okay.
you know, so there's a big educational gap between
Sure.
the folks that are even coming through the police academies, and then you've got these supervisors who are trying to supervise these high performers or these guys trying to get into that kind of stuff, and they don't understand that aspect of it.
So are they telling them why they can't do that, or they just is
Yeah,
it just too aggressive or too progressive, or why are they telling them they can't do that?
I had somebody tell me that they're not comfortable operating in the gray area, and I find that
I mean, don't we live in the gray area?
well,
I mean, as cops,
but it's really not- I mean-
seriously, don't we live in the gray area as cops?
my thing is like, it's just like basketball, man. If you understand the rules of the game,
Sure.
It's not
you can
gray.
play it a lot.
It's not gray.
It's like you can
Yeah.
play it a lot better. So like, you know, like the Chiefs when they won the Super Bowl, they downed the ball right there at the 1 inch line. That way they could kick a field goal
Knowing
and
that they could
control the
kneel it
clock,
out,
right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was completely within the rules. That was a great strategy. Us using Wren versus United States, us using the Carroll Doctrine, us using all these other things like Pennsylvania versus Mims, Maryland versus Wilson. Those are all things that we have in our tool belt that we're not using, and that some supervisors feel like that is a gray area. Man, that's far from it. We've had this discussion before, you know, that it's completely within what is allowed. I hope that Mike is picking that
It's
up.
definitely, if you can hear any feedback, it's definitely Trom taking a leak in the background right now.
Man, it's like he's pouring it out of a 5-gallon bucket.
It's just the door's not shut. I am confident.
Yeah, he definitely did not shut the door. So let me ask you a question on this topic. Oh, apparently he's just
like-
going to shout from the bathroom.
He's just letting us know his hydration status. It's all good, guys. I'm well hydrated.
I want to ask you a question kind of on what you're talking about. And I'm not trying to interrupt you, but it came to mind. And since, you know, Trom's peeing and now flushing in the background, this is probably a good...
There's no way to edit this out. This
Yeah,
is in
no,
here,
you're going to
so.
hear the peeing in the toilet. So, you know, talking about these different cases, which, you know, I tell our guys is, you know, it's cool to drive fast, it's cool to do all these things, but where you really make your career is where you understand what you can and can't do legally,
Yes.
right? So my question to you is, you know, you have these supervisors that you're saying, hey, I don't want to live in the gray area, or I'm not comfortable with you being in the gray area. Do you think it's because they don't understand
Yes.
what they can and can't do?
Absolutely.
Okay. So they would be comfortable with it maybe if they understood. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I almost feel like, and I refer to it as trooper folklore, where they don't understand what the origin is of their beliefs. So they don't understand the origin of why they're saying the things they say.
Sure.
So, like, I see a lot of confusion over wingspan searches. I see a lot of confusion over how far we can go in a vehicle search
Sure.
and things like that. But we have case law from the Supreme Court that really lays all that out very well, that they've just not taken the time to either refresh upon or read themselves.
Okay.
So, I call it all toilet material. Toilet material being stuff that you can read while you're taking a shit.
Right.
And just get brushed up on your policies, get brushed up on case law. This is all stuff that you can do instead of reading the back of a shampoo bottle or scrolling Instagram. You could be
Right.
scrolling Google Scholar and saying, I'm interested about these circumstances of a traffic stop. What case law tells me that I can do the things that I can do?
So do you find that, and I think Trom may agree with me on this, because I know there's a lot of, supervisors, if you will, that I know we deal with, because we're more drunk hunters, right? I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't...
Hey, and I want to be really, really clear. Criminal interdiction includes DWI.
Oh,
Sure.
everything you're saying. I
Yeah.
mean, like from
Yeah.
the long.
We're looking
stop
at
to-
each other going,
to-
this is
to the-
exactly what
to
we
the
talk about.
3 questions I ask, and I'm eyeballing them. Within 5 seconds, I'm like, I'm like, they're going to jail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
You
then
know,
everything from that 3
step
questions
on
on,
out.
you're like,
Yep.
now I just
Yep.
have to
It's-
present
Yep.
for the court.
Now I got to get. Yep. Now I got to just put the bow on my case.
Yeah.
But they're done.
Yeah. So what you're saying, again, we keep looking at each other, but I'm going, dude, this is
Yeah.
what we talk about or teach DWI wise, and you're talking about, criminal interdiction, which,
Yeah.
I get it includes it. In my mind, it's a much broader topic, I guess, than what we deal with, because I'm usually honed in on. I'll tell myself I'm usually honed in on, is this guy drunk? Because that's what I like to do.
Yep, absolutely. Because listen to this is my, and I heard it from a really good supervisor that I had in my career. But he said a DWI is a homicide looking for a place to happen.
Oh yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
DWI is a homicide looking for a place to happen. And if we're not putting those people on the shoulder, we're messing up.
Sure.
You look no further than in Kansas City
I know,
a couple
dude.
days ago.
Yeah.
That officer,
Sure.
drunk driver, killed him.
Sure.
Man, killed him,
And his
canine,
dog and a
Pedestrian.
and a pedestrian.
Yeah.
Incredibly tragic.
So I'm going to tell myself for a second. I find my looking back, and I've admitted this before. I'm not too big to admit this. Looking back, I've probably been honed in on. Not probably. I know I've been honed in on. Is this person drunk or high, and how do I get to the point of where I need to be to arrest this person, right? And listening to what you're saying, I haven't. And I think Tron would agree because again, we have our career path is pretty
slow
similar.
down a little bit. And,
Yeah. I've probably missed things. I know I've missed things.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to say probably because
Absolutely.
that's a coward's way out. I've missed things because I've been honed in on one thing.
And not even want it. Not even want it.
Right.
You're on to the next. The next.
I got one
driver.
drunk,
Yeah.
and while I'm processing this drunk, I'm going, "Where's the next guy?" Right? I already
And
know I got
then
this guy.
right in front of you have somebody giving you, 2-3 lies, but
Sure.
they're not drinking.
Sure.
Down the road,
Yeah.
the guy.
So I got two questions for you that I've written down here. So number one, with supervisors, do you think it's just they're not updating themselves? Like, because I think what I find is a lot of sergeants or zone sergeants stick to the way they were trained. So like the way they were trained in the academy. And then now 15 years later, a new guy's going, well, no, this is the way it is. An example that I'm going to use is city speed limits. So a lot of times I get calls where I'm at is, well, you can't stop.
enforce
Yeah,
it?
you can't stop people for city speed limits. So question number one is, do you think that's a kind of on the supervisors in that they're living in the past and what they know versus updating themselves?
I'll even say they don't what they think they know. Because
Sure.
again, back to the urban legend of law enforcement, they were told this by a training officer, they heard this from another officer, but they've never taken the time to research the origin of that belief. And that's important for us to continue to do, is to understand why it is that we're telling people this.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think it becomes, I hate to use the word lazy, but I'm not sure that there's another one out there.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, like the why on why we're not updating ourselves or keeping
Yes.
ourselves informed.
Lazy's it. And we try to shy away from that, but it's also true.
We also have an issue where it's like, if in doubt, don't. And then I think there's a follow-up to that, which is, if in doubt, don't, then go back and find out why.
Sure.
You really need to go learn why it is that you are in doubt and what to do in the future. So, my partner Brooks and I would just sit there in the media and we'd bounce what ifs off of each other all the time. What if this happens? What if this happens? What's our course of action? If this, then that kind of scenarios. And we were constantly throwing case law at each other. We were constantly trying to keep each other updated on different cases around the state, different cases around the nation, things that would bind us in law enforcement to adhere to what the courts decided. And that some people are like, well, that sounds like a lot of work. Well, here's the thing. A+ students do their homework.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's
a quote.
important for us to do.
Quote.
That is.
That's a quote, right? A+
Yeah.
students.
A+ students do their homework at 33:52.
Yeah.
Write that down. That's a good. But no, I agree. I think that's what separates good officers or decent officers that do what they have to do versus officers that excel in what they do.
Sure.
Is understanding and keeping up to date. Because there's court cases that, yes, I could do something yesterday, but I can't today.
Right.
Or I couldn't do something yesterday and I can now. Right. And I think that's the important thing is understanding, and maybe you would agree or not agree, but is understanding when things change and when they do, what has changed.
Exactly. Arizona versus Gant was
That's the one I'm thinking of,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. And that's just really rocked people in Arizona versus Gant.
Sure.
But really, I was really happy with that. And then we had the other case that was pretty significant, U.S. versus Rodriguez. Which
Okay,
talked
yep.
about how you were going to use the police canine.
Sure. And it was specifically marijuana at that point, right? Is that
This
the
was
case
a
I'm thinking of?
methamphetamine case.
Okay.
So it happened,
Did it hit on weed and there was meth in the car, or am I thinking of a different case?
So this was what it came down to, was a whisper stop from DEA.
Okay.
And this officer up in Nebraska made a traffic stop, who also was a canine officer.
Okay.
And the courts just wanted to. All right. So prior to that, we had this thing that was called the de minimis detention. Like it was so little amount of time that it had really no impact on detaining a person, so it was allowed to run the dog around the car. So absent any reasonable articulable suspicion, we couldn't detain somebody for a canine. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, but what we took out of that, even from prosecutors and a lot of cops, was you can't hold people for canines.
Yep.
Yeah.
Time limit, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah.
You can't hold people for canines. And that's not what that case decided. It said, hey, you have to have reasonable articulable suspicion as to why you're going to continue to detain somebody for the response of a canine. And I'm all for that, man. Why would you ever detain a United States citizen without reasonable articulable suspicion? So I thought it cleared it up very, very nicely. And people just didn't research the case law. They maybe read a snippet of it. I'm guilty of that too, where you just read the headline.
Sure, yeah.
And then
or the findings at the bottom. You don't get into the
you
deep
just go
what
straight
happened,
to the bottom.
or the conclusion, whatever it is.
Give me the punchline.
Yeah.
Give me the Cliff Notes versions. I read through that entire case. I'm like, this changes absolutely nothing for me. And so
And maybe even supports what you're doing at the time anyway, right?
Yeah, because if I'm going to... In fact, it wasn't long after the Rodriguez case came out that I held somebody for 45 minutes waiting for a canine to respond.
Okay.
And the courts found that to be justified. Because I had all this reasonable
So
articulable
sexy.
suspicion.
And yeah, dude, that's...
I'm half chub right
Yeah.
Again, the words I didn't know I had to edit.
Let's go back and look at this. Let's go from start to finish
45
on an
minutes.
interdiction stop. I'm sitting in the median, and I've watched people for the last 22 years of my career travel up and down this interstate. And at this location, during the day or night or whatever, highway traffic numbers show that there's going to be 24,000 cars that pass me at this location in an 8-hour period. So of those 24,000 cars, I'm looking at most of them, and then I see the one person who has a complete different reaction to my presence than anybody else has amongst all those thousands of cars that have gone by. I pull out on that car, and although I haven't seen a violation yet, they have slowed down upon seeing the presence of a law enforcement officer. The only thing that's changed in their environment is my presence, and they start freaking out. So then I pull out behind them. I observe them make a traffic violation, and that's Wren versus United States.
Oh, yeah.
I put them on the shoulder. I walk up to the car after noticing that they've taken a long time to stop. Maybe they're making phone calls, spraying air freshener, lighting up a cigarette. All these things that I need to document in my report because I'm creating this reasonable articulable suspicion pizza, the probable cause pizza, and I'm noting that in my report. And then I get up to them and I have the conversation with them. But, when I present this to a grand jury and I lay it out like this, that nothing else going on in this person besides the presence of law enforcement, they freak out upon seeing my patrol car. They take a long time to stop. They're spraying air freshener in the air. They're lighting up a cigarette. They're making phone calls. They're waking up their passenger. But when I'm explaining this to a grand jury, they're all leaning in like, what's he got in the car?
Sure.
And I haven't even yet talked to this person. And then we go in and we ask those 5 questions, and I sort them out real quickly like that. Ask for consent to search the car. Boom, we're into the case. We've got the loaded dope. We've got the contraband. And so I lay it out like that to the jurors all the time, and they really understand. People who aren't even law enforcement are like, hell yeah, that's suspicious. You better do something, because this person's going up and down our interstates trafficking drugs or engaged in some other type of criminal activity like cell phone trafficking, identification trafficking, interdiction for protection of children, all these different kind of things that we need to be attentive for, and we need to be alert to that. Kind of went off on a tangent there, but I'm just trying to build that reasonable articulable suspicion, that probable cause pizza.
Sure.
So that way, when I do have to call for a dog, I've got the justification that's going to support me for the next 45 minutes. And I think we do a poor job of articulating a lot of times. And especially if you have a supervisor that's not staying up on what they need to stay up on, they're not seeing that as an issue like we see that as an issue.
Yeah.
And so I've been in circumstances where I've had to put myself between the staff and a road guy that's out there making traffic stops and doing the right thing, but has been told by staff that that's not correct. And that's a very tough position to put a person into.
Sure.
Because you really rely upon those staff members to know their stuff.
Sure.
And
especially if they're approving your stuff and reviewing things as they go up, right?
yeah, and then they have control of your promotions. They have control of your assignments. And how do you control their ego, which is very difficult. Because if you upset them at that point, and you don't want to come across as a know-it-all. Mm-hmm. It's it's a very difficult spot to be in.
So my question is, again, completely from a civilian standpoint, is that do we think maybe leadership not staying up on case law and being able to speak eloquently to that and support their guys in using that? Do you think at a certain point that the system or, the leadership roles no longer reward or incentivize staying up on that information, right? That's not what essentially got them to those positions. Therefore, laziness might be a factor, but they're going to contribute their efforts to whatever, will continue to help them promote their career or advance their career. And so I don't know if this is a topic for, leadership, 100%. If you will. But if the system is no longer supporting them knowing case law and being able to speak to it and support their guys in it, then it's human nature to no longer spend time and energy doing some of that thing that's not going to necessarily get them the reward that they seek, if you will.
You're spot on with that. Now, I feel like I'm dominating this conversation.
No, that's why you're here, man. We want you here.
Is the lazy metric in law enforcement for assessing people's performances is arrests or ticket totals.
Sure, tally marks.
Absolutely tally marks. And that is such a lazy metric because I work with people, my family is a stranded motorist on the side of the road, and I know that person's going to go change that guy's my family's serpentine belt right there on the side of the highway.
Right.
I'm like, dude, that guy brings a value to my agency that I'm very thankful for.
Sure.
Okay. He's not going to go burn up the ticket books. He's not going to go do any of that stuff that maybe gets him promoted, but he is an extremely valuable person on my agency. We have, it's a lazy metric just to assume that somebody's a good cop because they make lots of arrests.
Yeah.
I mean, look at traffic-centered cops that go out there and make 2,000, 3,000 car stops in a year.
Yeah.
Write all those tickets, and then they haven't found one gun.
Right. Or their drug arrests are zero, and their drunks are zero.
10
or
arrests out of 1,500 contacts.
Right.
What are you doing?
What are they doing?
What are you doing? I
Just
mean,
as
that's not efficient.
Yeah, just
You're delivering the mail.
Again, from a completely outside perspective, like what gets rewarded gets repeated, right? So if a lazy metric is easy, it's a tally mark that's easy to track and it's easy to base rewards and merit off of, then that's what's going to get repeated, and or that's what people will focus on if they want to grow their careers from a personal standpoint, right? So I think that from a systematic standpoint, that's a problem overall is, if we are rewarding the wrong behaviors and or the wrong type of metrics, then that's what's going to get repeated in our systems. And knowing case law and knowing the inner workings and some of those...
Actually being good at what you do.
Yeah, some of those more detailed pieces of the puzzle aren't necessarily rewarded, therefore they don't get repeated. So I don't know if that leads into the leadership question or that conversation about the role of leadership, but I think that that's important. It's obviously prevalent in your guys' industry. It's prevalent in other industries everywhere.
Private industry too, yeah.
Yeah, private industry is the same thing. You start to see people that goal is promotion and their goal is leadership, and it's not a problem to have that goal, but as you see them go up, you see that they're going to repeat the behaviors that they have seen reward from, or that they have been, they've benefited from, if you will.
Yeah, and then they have a hard time breaking out of that. So you see a lieutenant, a captain who made their career doing those high numbers, and they see a person out there doing work that's different than theirs.
Sure.
Then they see that as wrong. So they're like, man, that wasn't my experience. That wasn't how I was rewarded on this agency. That's not what got me promoted. So I'm going to continue to support the people that do the work how I did it.
Right.
And then you end up becoming inbred really quick, where you just don't have any diversity of thought.
But don't you think that now everybody has the mindset? Everybody has the same mindset at that point. So then guys that or gals that are outside of that kind of suffer from.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So if you have, hey, listen, we're promoting, traffic stops or whatever it is, and then you get a leader that's made their career on traffic stops, then that's all we focus on.
Well, it's cyclical, right? So this obviously worked out for you, therefore you now advance your career, and now you are now doing the same thing that's going to work out for somebody else. So it's cycle. It's creating that same thought process and that same mindset of this is how and what is meaningful to the role and the position. And anybody who does something a little bit different or views the role or the job differently may or may not be somebody we want to promote, if you will.
Yeah. So I suffered that a lot because I had a friend that was on our agency for just a brief period of time, and he was not willing to write poor people tickets. And he was in a position around some leadership. They're like, you got to do that if you're going to be on this agency.
Right.
And for me, I had a different leadership, and my leadership was like, you can make your decisions. Somebody else is going to be breaking the law. Go write that person a ticket. And you see other people that go out and stack 5 tickets on a poor person. And what are we doing?
What will we accomplish at that point?
Not a thing. We're just pissing them off.
I mean, you got your tally marks, right? So
Yeah,
if that's what the system
exactly.
rewards, then that's the behavior that will be repeated.
So I was criticized in my evaluations coming up that I didn't have enough ticket totals. And so I tried to live that life for a little bit, and it was miserable. Mm-hmm. I couldn't sleep well at night because I didn't feel like I was doing the right thing. And I made a determination with the assistance of my wife. It's like, you go out there and do what makes you happy. You go out there and do the job that you remember what you thought a cop did when you were 10 years old. That's the easy thing to do. It's like, hey, what'd you think a cop did when you were 10 years old? Go do that job and you'll be fine. And so I didn't go out there and chase tickets. I went out there and chased impact, to have an impact on society through either finding concealed criminal activity, finding drunk drivers, things like that. And I was punished for it for a long time.
Sure.
What was wild, though, is because I didn't have a supervisor that appreciated that kind of work. I had a lieutenant that didn't appreciate that kind of work. But we had this major at the time who did appreciate that kind of work, and he would read the teletypes, he'd read the arrest reports, and he'd send you messages. You're like, hey, man, that was awesome. How'd you get into this? He'd call you and say, how'd you get into this thing? And pretty soon that started to trickle down, and the major would be giving you an award or something like that, and the staff would say, well, we need to support that.
Sure.
And that's when we started to see a change in culture of people are like, wow, that's what gets you rewarded. Let's see if we can do that.
Yeah. I just wonder, did they support it because they believed it, or did they want to make major?
That's my question.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying because.
So I'm thinking the same question.
Intent. I feel like anybody's intent you can't judge, but like the fact that the major himself was
so
that
somebody
kind of
above
person,
them has said this is good work, and
that
now
tone
below
is set
them,
at the top, right? So the fact that he was at the top setting the tone changed the culture for everybody beneath them.
Speed of the leader, speed of the team.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think that what gets rewarded gets repeated. I think speed of the leader equals speed of the team, and people started recognizing that the leader was saying, "Hey, this is good work." So that's the new metric.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when we look at leadership, and I get frustrated by it all the time.
We're about to get on it.
No, I would,
We're about
again,
to get on
side
it.
note, we can write it down for later, but I would like to know how this major got to that position.
Yeah.
If he played, I don't want to say play the game, I know you hate that, but if he
I mean,
played
if
the
it's
game
the same
long enough,
major we had when we came on, he was a dog.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we're talking about the same dude.
Yeah, he kind of came out of this area a little bit.
Initials GS?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he was a dog.
So he's my, we're talking about that dude.
He was a big drunk hunter.
Oh yeah, he was.
Huge drunk hunter dog.
But the thing is, he knew what people need to be going to jail. He knew where we need to spend our time and efforts. And he was a drunk hunter, and he did outstanding work. And this is my thing too, is like, we create really good drunk hunters.
Yeah.
But I think that I can take those drunk hunters and also make them really good just criminal interdiction officers because the same principles apply.
Oh, man.
So
you are preaching. Because what you say, I tell the kiddos, and I say kiddos, the new hires this, drunk hunting and criminal interdiction is the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's just you're looking for different things.
Yeah.
It's the same concept. Man,
Right.
I love
the
that.
answers are different, but the questions are the same.
Sure.
The same principles apply because when we go into doing field sobriety tests, those are the sorting out questions that we're talking about.
Sure.
It's like, how do we, and do you need to Mirandize that person before you do field sobriety tests? Some supervisors are out there telling guys that before you can ask any questions, you need to Mirandize
Which
them.
is insane.
Absolutely insane. And so I've had to cover this topic on multiple occasions with individuals to try to say, no, you wouldn't do that on a DWI. Why would you do it here in this instance where you think that there's drug trafficking or some other instance going on? So, back to the leadership point is like, I got frustrated with that a lot. And I didn't know, I would blame it on other people above me and everything like that. And at some point in time, it came down to me to say, and I heard it from this guy that's incredibly great mentor for me was Andy Davis. And I'm sorry you guys didn't have the experience of working with that guy, but he was just so, man, just everything cop.
Yeah.
He just was.
A cop's cop.
He was the epitome of what I wanted to be. And anyway, he said, hey, leadership is, and other people have said it too, but leadership is action, it's not position. And so I really took that to heart to say, I'm going to lead from where I'm at, doing the things that I enjoy doing. And eventually, people are going to get on board with it.
God, love that, dude.
And eventually it happened to some degree, but I still see that resistance.
Yeah.
You know? And for me, looking at the leadership, it just almost feels like they've climbed to those ranks because that was a goal of theirs. It never was their goal to be like really good cops.
Yeah.
They just wanted to be really good cops to get promoted.
Sure.
And I think that we need to change it to we need to be really good cops to have an impact on our society in a positive way. And then if you're doing that well, then you should get promoted. And I don't see that necessarily happening. Now, I do feel excited about some current leadership that we have. And I just hope that that pans out. But for me, I'm like, I'm going to continue to try to be a leader from where I'm at. But I also want to make sure I say this when I talk about leadership. I said I think before you can be a good leader, you got to be a good follower.
Yeah.
So like in my instance, Brooks McGinnis was the supervisor of my team, and I made sure that I never did anything that made it seem like I wanted to be the leader.
Sure.
You know? I wanted to be a good follower to that guy because he had a great vision, he had really clear objectives, and we needed to pursue those things. And it made the mission easy to understand what success looks like.
Yeah.
So, and then when I say that, when we're talking about what success looks like, I think leadership oftentimes has a hard time defining success, specifically in law enforcement. We're not in a spot where our sales are up. That tells us that's a good thing.
Right.
So we can't operate like a business necessarily. And we also don't know the impact of all your good work making DWI arrests. But we should see that reflected somewhere in our traffic crash totals. We should see it somewhere in our fatalities. But we need to be less lazy in what we make determinations on our metrics of what a good officer is. I would love to see like a baseball card of cops. Like, all right, here's the picture of so-and-so, flip it over and you see all their stats.
Sure.
Like, he's got an ERA of this. Or like for me, one thing I teach is, you know, in Missouri, 25% of the cars we stop, we find contraband in when we search the cars. So that's like a 250 batting average.
Sure.
Right? So 250 batting average probably puts you into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, you're going,
Yeah. Right. But then what I've seen is like people who come through that criminal interdiction course, the criminal patrol course, they flip that stat. Where I'm seeing guys with 50% contraband hit rate, 75%. Brooks McGinnis, Bo Ryan, these guys are knocking out 90% of the cars that they search result in contraband seizures. And it's not because they're lucky, it's because they're skilled. And so if we can replicate that with other people, we're not alienating all those people who don't need to be searched.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like the selection process on a drunk. We're not out there doing field sobriety tests on sober people most time. You know, we're doing field sobriety tests on people that we have already selected that are going to be drunk.
Yeah.
And
That's like that 410.
I got a big nod
All
on
right,
that
keep
one.
following my
Yes,
finger.
sir.
Let's
Yeah.
go. All right.
so, you know, I compare it to going up to a tree in the forest and saying, hey, I'm hunting, but I'm not sure what, and I'm just going to shoot my shotgun up in the tree and see what falls out.
Right.
So I think that I want to be more strategic, more sniper-oriented on what I'm targeting and stay within some very specific principles. And we get confused in leadership, I think, about everything about police work is very complicated. You want this guy to be a social worker. You want to be a psychologist. You want to be a medic.
Yeah,
you want them to be...
We're tasked with so many things.
Really are.
Right.
You know, you got to understand how every chemical affects the human body. You got to understand how to fight somebody, and they don't give us the time to do that.
Sure.
I don't know if you saw my post on the Super Bowl and police reform.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I
So-
reposted that. That was good. That was solid.
Cool. So the idea on that, if you didn't see it, it's just like you're asking us to do all these tasks,
Yeah.
and it's an incredibly varied skill set. We got to make this more simple for people. And so I would like to see leadership focus on 3 things to make good cops. And just to make it simple, and I call them the 3 C's. And this is what I teach anybody that wants to listen. But it's going to be communication, case law, and control. And those 3 things, I think, cover every aspect of what we're looking to try to accomplish in law enforcement. And if we have supervisors, leadership that says, this is what I need you to achieve, I think we're going to put out good cops. And when I say communication, it means listening well, speaking well.
Sure.
Written and orally, that you can communicate with people from a broad spectrum of backgrounds. That also includes empathy, compassion.
Sure.
I think all those things are a part of our communication. And then when you talk about case law, it's like, I need you to be able to apply case law, constitutional laws. Understand what you can and can't do, and understand not just necessarily the ins and outs of each case law, but I really want you to understand the principles of those case laws. Like Terry versus Ohio, we can get into the weeds on that, but really what it's talking about is reasonable articulable suspicion.
Absolutely.
Then we go into control. Control, people are going to think when I say that means controlling people. The first thing is controlling yourself.
Sure.
Your ego, your emotions, your own discipline, the condition of your equipment, your ability to operate that equipment, and then eventually controlling as to like grappling, because I really think grappling is something that it really needs to be in the repertoire of every cop to be able to control somebody. I always say grappling is a physical continuation of de-escalation efforts.
Okay.
And the idea is that I'm not going to try to hurt that person, but I'm going to try to control them, get them in a position of safety to where I can negotiate a better outcome.
I like that.
And
I'm just trying to PBT him. No, I'm kidding. But I like that. That's good, because I think people think control is a dominating negative thing.
Yeah, and that's,
right?
I guess maybe, and my wife and I actually talked about this the other night. We're like, do I need to come up with a different word for that? Because I don't want to be perceived by either the left or the right as being somebody who's trying to control, the government's trying to come in and control. But it starts with the individual officer and their control of themselves and their environment. So, like, I'm sure you're making traffic stops in an area that's safe for you and the suspect. You control that aspect of it as much as possible in case they take a long time to stop or they flee from you. But you're controlling that environment as much as possible. You're controlling their ability to do harm to you by walking up on the passenger side. You're controlling the conversation by having good communication skills. And I think if we can just make assessments based upon that, and if we can say, hey, these cops do these 3 things really well, or you're deficient in this area, I really need you to improve in that spot, then we give them training directed towards that. But I just think that we struggle with trying to identify what it is that makes a good cop.
Sure.
And it's not ticket totals, man. It's not arrest totals. It's so many other factors.
Do you think that transitions into what makes a good leader in law enforcement? Because I think that, and not to get too deep into the weeds, but really looking at things and with specific agencies, not to mention any, but I think we promote oftentimes good test takers. And I'm not trying to get into a promotional, type of thing, but everything you're talking about is not measurable via test, right? And what I mean by that is rarely does a test talk about case law or updates, right? Usually it's policy or things like that,
or individual laws.
Sure,
it's like ATV flag laws. Why do I need to know that in a promotional test? I can look that up later.
And that's my point. Is even like policies. I think now in 2023 we have the ability to any policy I need to look up, I can look up in about 15 seconds.
Right.
I type in a keysert or a keyword, it hotkeys me to that section. I review it. So to kind of piggyback on what you're talking about is, we don't know how to really measure good cops, but do you think that kind of transitions into we don't know how to measure or know who's going to be a good leader based off of things that we use right now?
Yeah, 100%. So I define, here's the interesting, we're going to talk about the box, right?
Yeah, and I want to get to the box. All right, I want to get to the box. All right, so you have a...
You want that going or you good?
Yeah. Yeah, and don't worry about that thing too. We're not going to put like videos and crap and stuff about that out. So, all right. So you've got a box with you.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So let's talk about the box.
It's not a shoe box. It's like an index card box. Is that right?
It is.
Okay.
So I kind of have this method. So I carry this this wallet around. It has a 3x5 notepad in it.
Okay.
And I carry these pins that just go into my pocket. And this is my everyday carry, to use that vernacular. And when I hear somebody say something, that's spot on or whatever, something I want to remember, I'm writing it down. And then at the end of the month, I go through this notebook and I look for, I write everything down in here from shopping lists to kid events to, quotes that I think were really good or concepts that were really awesome. And then I go through that at the end of the month, and I use one of these notebooks every month. And then I write them out onto index cards, and I put them in this box. And I categorize it by, different types of topics.
Which is what?
Yeah, that's
let me
awesome.
say this is badass.
I love a good system.
So I keep a journal.
Yeah.
So I write things down. Mm-hmm. I listen to speeches. I write that down. But
this is next level.
That's where I keep it, right? I keep it in my notebook. And you're now transcribing that onto cards, which you now, by category, put it into this index card box.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what my intention
sweet.
is ever to use it for. But I don't know. I'm thinking.
Do you ever just go through it whenever needing a moment?
Well, that's funny you say that, because it is like needing a moment. Talking about leadership here, it's like maybe I saw some bad leadership, or maybe I, as a supervisor here in my position now, I need to maybe find some good leadership inspiration or clarity, and I'll go to my leadership tab and I'll see, what is it that I have written down there that I feel like when I'd heard it was important. Mm-hmm. And so the things that I brought with me today is the definition of leadership.
Oh, yeah.
Leadership is inspiration, confidence, and culture building. As a leadership vision, I tell people that, and this is like something I said to my nephew, who is he grew up in a very small town. He had a rough upbringing with his mom and dad, and he was gay. And being a kid in a small town, gay, and very tough. But I just told him one day, I said, hey man, you can be anything you want, just not lazy. And I thought that was a leadership vision that I wanted to tell people that worked with me. It was like, you can be anything you want in this career, just don't be lazy. So I also talked about leadership. I heard this quote: success of a skipper is to see the ship through the eyes of the crew. And when I see that within my own agency, sometimes I think they really miss what it looks like to see our agency through the eyes of the crew. So, for example, our reporting systems, are all the different things that they're just like in all these meetings. Just one more thing, have your guys do. Just one more thing.
Right.
And by the end of that meeting, it's a dozen things that you've asked for just one more thing. And you've really made it difficult then for them to get out there and do the thing that we hired them to do.
Sure.
Just go out there and fight crime.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
so what do you think the remedy is for that?
I think we need to go back to simplifying things. We need to look. I'm a big systems person, so like the Pareto's principle.
You're gonna get her. You're gonna get the SME. You're gonna get the SME
80-20
working.
rule. Yes.
So we need to focus on the things that bring us 80% of our success.
Yeah.
And I think it applies within law enforcement too. We see 20% of our people result in 80% of our success. We see 20% of our people that also result in 80% of our failures. And we need to address all those people. So I think if leadership viewed these things through the eye of the crew, I think we'd be doing a lot better. We lose that perspective, I think, as we climb up in the ranks. And I think it's also important for leaders to say, I can go to you and say, how do you see this event? How do you see this type of situation? And I need to have good counsel around me. And that's, to think that a leader has all the answers is wrong. I think you really just need to be able to say, take a consensus and see what the result is. And as a leader,
That humility,
Yeah.
to know that you don't know it all.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then at some point in time, the leadership has to say, this is the direction we're going. So the other thing regarding leadership is the reasons why people leave. And we kind of talked about this in some other circumstances offline. But number one, not treated with respect.
Sure.
Number two, prevented from making an impact. because everybody, no matter what their job is, they want to make an impact. I really believe that that's the case. It's the thing that keeps so many people going. It's the gas in their tank. Number 3, not being listened to. And I think it's incredibly important for a leader to be able to hear somebody have different opinions than them, and for that to that leader to have the mindset of, I'm not so rigid in my thinking that I can't accept somebody else's input.
Yeah, and I think that to that note, it is incredibly rare, right? So as the leader, if you don't set that tone that it's okay to have a different point of view than then you will get yes men around you that just...
Yeah, General Patton said, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody's not thinking.
As the leader, you have to create that tone that it's okay to disagree with me. It's okay to tell me what you think. Otherwise, you'll just get people that disagree everything you say, and you're not getting true and honest opinions.
Sure.
That could be swallowing a lot of pride.
Yeah, and that's the humility, that's that pride to let people know it's okay to disagree with you. Because I think, just from what I know of your agency, is that sometimes it's not okay to disagree with senior ranking legals.
I would say it's not only not okay, you often there's consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think what you said was good counsel. I think is exactly what you said. So, I think that would be surrounding yourself with people who are not like-minded.
Yes.
Right. And I think in a lot of agencies, and our own, right, that goes unnamed, but that you suffer consequences, or there are punishments for giving a different point of view. I'm not saying just walking in and saying, hey, listen, what you're doing is wrong.
Sure.
Just saying, hey, listen, but let's think about this. This is also an option that goes against what that person that's in power, I'm not going to call him a leader, but that person that's in a powerful position disagrees with. Mm-hmm. And I think that's my concern, is that we now punish people for bringing a different point of view when we should be encouraging that.
And so within our agency, there are people, and I'm thinking of one particular that's in this position now, who does go out and seek input from other people. And I find that incredibly, inspirational.
Sure.
And, when you're talking about swallowing pride, it's like eating kale. It's not that good, but it's tough to swallow, but it does really good for your body.
Sure.
And so...
It helps the digestive tract.
That's
You
going to make a
regret
good
it
taper.
at the end, but it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to make a good taper for the... the final point on why people leave, number 4, is like not being rewarded. We referred to that earlier. What gets rewarded gets repeated. And if you can just take the time to reward somebody, it doesn't take much. It's amazing what we ask cops to do, and they do it. And then we don't pat them on the back for it. And some people are like, suck it up. You're not in this job to get rewarded. Sure, I get that. But it is nice to hear.
Well, it's human. It's not even a job thing. You want to know that your efforts are appreciated. And so I think that's not even a law enforcement thing. I think that's just a people thing.
Yeah, and I want to talk about something real quick. So you and I have really never talked deep on this conversation, right?
Sure.
I think in passing, we've mentioned some stuff.
I'm just commenting on your guns.
But but
It's also good subjects.
yeah. So real quick, I have 3 things, and again that I highlighted real quick. So there's a presentation that I've done one time that we now have booked, 10, 12 times. It's called The Job Isn't Dead.
I love that.
So you're talking about morale, retention, etc. So the things that you mentioned was you put people want to have an impact, right? So in this presentation, we talk about purpose, which is why am I doing what I'm doing, which is the impact part of it, which I find so funny that you say that, and that's what we talk about. And you say not being heard, I think is what you kind of said. Mm-hmm. And I think communication is what we talk about, communication. And then the last thing is you put rewarded, and then we talk about recognized. And again, not ever talking about this, I find it so interesting that what you mention is what... And my information is not mine, by the way, so I'm not pitching, listen to me, I'm a genius, right? That's not what I'm saying. I get this from several books, several studies, Simon Sinek being a big one. I know you posted a few of his stuff. He's awesome. Jocko Willink, who I'm not a big
I don't like that he sleep shames me.
Yeah, I'm not a big fighter or a big jiu-jitsu guy, but I think that him and Leif Babin have some really good books. Dichotomy of Leadership, etc. There's some other good books that I've read on this, but the common theme is the things that you said, because again, I've never heard what you have written on your cards here, but the things that they've said is exactly what you've said. And I'm sitting here smiling about it because I'm going, this has to be the key to success if everybody's saying the same thing.
Agree. This is not new. We're not inventing this. We've just forgotten it. And we have to be reminded of that. And so that's why I think this box is important for me. Just as you said, I will go back and look at these and just review what I thought was important.
Sure.
And hoping that it's going to become the fiber of my person. Because if I have a recipe for success, if I have some type of formula that I can do over and over and over that is going to develop success, I think they exist within what we've learned from other people in the past, all the way from Marcus Aurelius to Jocko Willink to Simon Sinek, to all these people that have shown success. And then you also look at the people that were under the leadership of those types of personalities. They enjoyed their job. They were really effective at what they did. And if we're going to, we're talking about police reform and how confusing that whole concept is right now and what we need to be doing, we've got to have some bold leadership at this point in time in law enforcement to say, we're going to swallow some pride, we're going to do some things differently, and we're going to take these approaches to see us right this ship.
Sure.
And I'm not saying right it as to put it back to where it was, because I don't think that's a good thing.
Right.
I think we need to right it to the position. It's just like market corrections in the stock market.
Absolutely.
Here we are. We've had these incidents happen since 2014 with Ferguson on up to now with Tyree Nichols. We have to do better. And I think if we're not admitting that, we've messed it up. So I'm looking forward to that. I've got 7 years left in my career.
Sure.
And,
that's awesome, by the way. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. But I'm looking at it as like the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
I've got 7 years to make an impact.
And number one, jealous. You've only got 7 years. First of all, let me say, I love my job. So I
do
hear
too.
these guys say, I'm retiring in 10 days or whatever, or 3 years, 9 days, and 24 hours, whatever it is. I don't want to retire. I love what I do. And I think you do too, clearly.
I do.
So it's interesting you say that, but a lot of guys can, and couple can say exactly when they retire. But so what you've said, and I think what we've all agreed with is, so the big thing in changing the direction of the ship is a lot of times leadership will say, well, we don't have the budget, right? Or we don't have the manpower to do the things that you've just talked about. And the things that you've talked about and the things we've discussed so far cost nothing and require no additional manpower. None, right? These are things that we can do with what we have right now. And if we can do these things, I think we can solve the morale problem, the retention problem, which once we plug those holes, then probably solves the recruiting problem, right? But we focus on replacing people versus why are people leaving?
Exactly, man. Because we say this in our agency, but I don't know that we hold true to it all the time, because we say we are our own best recruiters. So everybody that's working in law enforcement, they should be the best recruiters for getting people in.
Sure.
It's going to be really important for those people to be happy about their job so they can speak to why they enjoy their job. And when they're feeling like they're not supported, when they're feeling like they're not rewarded, when they feel like they don't have a inspirational mission to achieve, they're not going to have good things to say about the job. I think we have a really cool job.
Awesome.
I think we have an incredibly important job, and I'm honored to do it despite all the crap that's happened since 2014.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about you coming on when Ferguson started. That's a tough time to start.
This is dicey.
That's probably why his career's trash.
Yeah.
It was dicey to
Really
say.
think about it. That's why he's really
yeah.
sucked his entire career. Yeah.
It's real
But
touching.
it's funny, it's like when I go and speak to new hires, and I'll ask them, I'm like, why are you guys here? Because I feel like I'm going to get one of two responses. It's either for bad reasons or good reasons.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how do I continue to get those people that are here for the good reasons to continue to come in the door?
Sure.
And when I was a recruit in the academy, there were some people that came in as instructors that I said, that's the guy I want to model my career after.
Sure.
And I think it's really important that we make sure we bring those people in. So those recruits are saying, that's the gold standard.
Because that's the first person they see is the instructors.
Yes.
The instructional staff.
Right.
Or they have a real relationship with, and they can, they may have seen you on a traffic stop or trauma on a traffic stop or whatever. But I think the instructional staff are the ones they spend time with and develop, or not develop, but what they want to be like.
Yes.
Right? A role model, if you will.
Yeah.
So this may derail us or whatever. Is there a mentor process?
There
or
is.
Okay.
And
what are the opportunities with that?
It's a formal mentoring process where
You're a mentor, right?
Yeah.
Several.
Yeah, speak to
I'm a
that
recruiter.
because
You what?
I'm a part-time recruiter.
Is it, yeah.
Also, why we have a problem. Hey, this guy's recruiting and a mentor.
So okay,
Let's
so
get
is
out of here. We've
mentorship
solved it.
different- Is mentorship different than FTO in terms of your guys' structure?
everything I think that's most important
Yeah.
for people that
Okay.
are mentors and FTOs is the informal aspects of it. And you spoke to it offline is those informal leaders. And I think people have a really good ability to recognize, game recognizes game, or people at least recognize what it is that they want to try to accomplish. And so they gravitate towards those people. And I think that people say it all the time. I think it's kind of silly, but it's like, you have all these alphas in this profession.
Yeah.
And I don't really consider myself an alpha at all. But because I don't get offended easily. I don't. If you say something that you disagree with me with, I don't get upset by
I think
that.
it's healthy to disagree.
Yeah, I really do. I think that there's a lot of benefit to that. It's like eating kale. It kind of sucks
Sure.
to hear and kind of sucks to eat, but it's good for you. Those informal mentors, I think, are more impactful than any process that we can put in place, because essentially it looks like this. You've got your mentor. Are you a mentor right now?
No, not right now.
Thank God.
Have you had any successful completions on the mentor program?
No, the last person I mentored.
I'm going to back him up. It was a hire that did not need to happen. It's what I'm thinking of.
It was like 5'2", 265.
It was bad.
was not going to make it.
So I guess my question
It was
from an
really
organization
horrible.
standpoint is like, what is the criteria for mentors? Because I've worked at places where like
Really low because Trump.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean,
So
they let
I
me
worked
do
at
it.
places where it's like, oh, do you want to be a mentor? You get 62 cents more an hour or whatever.
You
But
get
you
nothing.
don't learn
No,
anything about
no, we
adult
get- we
learning
get-
styles
no.
or motivation or how to to drive that why behind why people are doing stuff. You're just like, you just get paid more.
Yeah. Well, we don't even get
You don't
paid
even get
more.
that.
It's
Oh, dang.
generally
You just
as
did it out of
long
the goodness
as-
out of your heart.
Yeah, as
Try.
long as you don't get in trouble
Okay.
in the last 18 months or something, you can
So
do
you
it.
must be the guy.
Yeah, it's like, well, I mean, I haven't.
Yeah, he's
I
the
haven't
only
been
guy
jammed
that
up by
had been in trouble
IA
in
a
18
minute,
months.
so they haven't
funny
caught
you
me
say that, though.
embezzling.
If somebody's not getting in trouble for something,
That's it.
and that's our criteria.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that you need to break eggs to make an omelet kind of approach
Right.
to law enforcement, but I think that there is this part of somebody being bold enough to, in your spot, enjoy what it is that you do and be able to explain why it is that you enjoy the things that you do, that there are going to be times that you're going to go out there and try to get experiences of the job where you failed.
Sure.
And it's such a difficult process because society may not accept that failure. But I look at it as an absolute teaching opportunity. I have learned so much more from my failures than I ever have my successes. And what was interesting is I listened to the Andrew Huberman podcast too, which I think it's just ranked just slightly above this podcast.
Just slightly.
Just-
We're nipping.
Yeah,
at
making
it.
that
You're
market
you're
share
right
is
there.
like-
In fact, by the time this airs, probably surpass them.
Yeah.
For now.
So Huberman, look out. We're coming for you. But he referred to the neurochemistry that occurs when somebody fails.
Yeah.
It's critical for learning. And, like in the academy, we'll apply stress. And we do that stress for an effort to, one, see if they can accomplish this under stress, but also to see if they have failures under stress, which does create according to Huberman, this very fertile neurochemical process within the brain that makes learning so much more important. And so we have to have failures. In law enforcement, it's very difficult to have those failures and let it be.
Well, and it's hard because I don't
Acceptable.
think that you guys, again, from an external standpoint, I don't think you guys operate within a system where it's okay to fail. And
Right.
learn from
No,
it.
it's criticized.
Right.
Big
Yeah.
time.
Whether it's publicly or internally, it's not an okay area to be like, I was human, I failed. This is what I'm going to do going forward. That is not a space in which I don't think you guys hold. You don't have some of those safeguards built in.
For us
if you
to
will.
fail, it's could be like detrimental. Number one, to your career,
Oh, God,
right?
yeah.
Criminally charged, fired,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and it could also change the entire landscape of law enforcement nationwide, right?
Sure.
I mean, case law, court, etc.
Because even with, like, from my background, even from a healthcare standpoint, you do have certain peer review boards and certain, like, vets that go through that you have to fail pretty hard to get your licensure or anything like that taken away. And so I think that that's just maybe a system that doesn't exist for you all.
It's not the same for sure, but it comes back to our leadership point is we have high demands of our officers. Failure is going to happen.
Sure.
And if we can see failure as a beneficial tool for learning, and this is where I feel like leaders fail. It's just like, hey, I tried to do this on a traffic stop, because I believe this person was a human trafficker, and whatever, you made a mistake along the way. I see our agency come down, or I see other agencies come down really hard on that person for their failure, instead of using that as a great opportunity to learn more.
Right.
And
Because wouldn't you agree that's a little bit of the gray area, right? Like
Yeah.
they did fail, but their intent was good, right? Or
what,
they
what did we do wrong,
Yeah.
and how can we do it differently next time?
Yeah. Well,
and that's
Versus let's punish this person.
it's a leadership thing that I think is really important to talk about. Is like, we got to define leadership pretty well, but it's leadership or management. You have this opportunity right here to say, is this management or is this leadership? But you have a person that failed. How you respond to that as a person of authority determines whether or not you're a leader or a manager.
Yeah.
Because I think the leader is going to take that person under their wing and say, let's do better the next time. We're going to learn from this.
Right.
Whereas the manager is going to say, I'm going to punish you for what it is that you did wrong.
the outcome, yeah.
And what that ends up breeding, because what gets rewarded gets repeated.
Sure.
You have a up.
Yeah.
You messed up. And then you're never going to do that again.
Right.
So you're never going to try to go pursue the criminal element because this went wrong for you.
I got punished last time.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Why would I do it
So
now?
what we end up breeding there within all of law enforcement is, if I don't do anything, I won't get in trouble for anything. And is that what we really want
Right.
in law enforcement?
Right.
And we don't. We don't want that in law enforcement. But that's since 2014, that's what we've created.
Yeah.
We've created the people that say, I'm not going to do that because if it's perceived to be incorrect or wrong or whatever, I'm going to get in trouble for it. So I'm better off doing nothing.
Right.
In fact, there's case law that talks about law enforcement not having the duty to intervene.
Sure.
And that's just so mind-boggling to me to think that, we don't have this duty to do those things.
We don't have to, right?
Yeah,
can
we
just
don't
sit
have
back.
to.
Yeah.
We can sit back and let it happen.
It's
so,
nuts.
like, we look at Uvalde and what happened there.
Man, I was just thinking the same thing.
I'm
Okay.
like, where are they going to go? Because they can't really punish these cops because there's not this duty to
they
act
didn't have to.
right by standing case law. And that's where I'm thinking, I'm looking at this table right here and say, this is where those decisions are made
Right.
on whether or not we're going to do that differently moving
Sure.
forward.
I mean, maybe we don't have to, but don't we have a moral and ethical obligation in the position that we hold to do that? Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, it does.
Though no one's holding our feet to the fire, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
From a just standpoint of law versus ethics, is this where we have some people that are just here to enforce law versus some people that are, ethically bound by a higher purpose, if you will?
That's exactly what we're looking for in law enforcement. It's tough to come by, is the people that are here for a higher purpose.
Sure.
I mean, it's not for grandstanding or anything else. It's these people that are intrinsically motivated to do better for other people. And man, those people are pretty rare in our society, which is sad to say. But we have a high concentration of them in law enforcement. And how we continue to get those people in, I don't have the answer for that. Maybe great mentors like Trauma here. Part-time recruiters.
Well, like from a civilian standpoint, or a reason why to the job, like call it what it is, there are not a lot of cards stacked in your favor, right? So you almost have to be intrinsically motivated to do some of these type of roles, because it's not the pay. Let's say that.
I mean, I think
Speak for yourself. I'm making money hand over
I'm rolling in
it.
cash.
Yeah. So it's not the pay. It's obviously not.
Trump had African lobster last night, something like that.
Yeah, the old lady had a South African lobster.
Okay, so she had a South African lobster with steak. And you had what?
Water.
Yeah.
It was good.
So I think that
it was worth it.
Yeah. So again, I mean,
it's not the money.
It's not the money. It's not the from an overall society, feeling of reward and external validation.
It's because you want to.
It's because you want to, right? And that's, again, law enforcement is one of those jobs. If you don't love it, it could be really bad for you. Or if you're not intrinsically motivated, it could go really bad for you.
Sure.
You have to love this job.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, part of the appeal to it, too. I'm married to a teacher who's cut from the same cloth that I want to see cops cut from, that are in it for the right reason. We're not going to be rich.
Sure.
We've accepted that.
Right.
But we are rich in so many other ways that is really motivating to me.
Right. Mm-hmm. Beyond money, right?
Oh,
there's different
man.
ways, right.
And that's the thing. It's like, I've got a really good friend of mine who makes a lot of money. And, he always asks me about my job. And what's funny is I've got this guy that's, very, very, doing very well. And he always asks about what I got into today. What was it that I did? And I just recognize that we have a tough job to do. To convince people to do it with us is going to be very hard to do. But I think that we have some good examples right here sitting at this table of people that you could look at and say, I want to be a person like that.
Sure.
And have this type of impact in society. And that's where it comes back to the leadership to say, I want to provide a clear vision on what it is that we do to be able to achieve these objectives of keeping our society safe. And we have these tools, but we also have this case law that supports us, and we were looking for these specific applicants that communicate well, they understand case law, they understand how to control not only themselves but other people, and apply that in very dynamic and rapidly unfolding scenarios that achieves the benefit for the entire society. It's extremely rewarding. It isn't going to show up in my paycheck ever.
Right.
But I sleep well at night, because of what I feel like I bring to society.
Love it, man. I mean, I can't even get into some of it. But man, this makes me feel super good. All right, I've got to take the reins just for a second.
I do have one question.
Yeah, so
kind of wrapping this up.
Yeah, can I, real quick?
Yeah.
So number one, wrapping it up. First off, dude, you're coming back.
Oh, cool.
Or we will come to you, right?
Yeah.
I love this
got the
leadership
travel
side of things.
You've got
I want to get deeper into the box. What's in the box?
Yeah.
I want to get deeper into some of the things I've written down here. Plus your bike crash.
No.
we didn't
even
by the way,
touch on
we got the checkbox number 1, and we're 90 minutes into this.
Yeah.
Thing, right.
That's funny.
So I've got a lot more things I want to talk to you about. But first off, I want to congratulate Trom for getting promoted.
Congrats, man.
Yeah.
I got everybody fooled.
Yes, which
That's awesome.
again, I'm biased because he's a homie of mine, but when I see people like this getting promoted to a position of leadership, it makes me feel better about the direction that we're headed, and maybe there is a shift.
I say this too, and I will send those people, because in our agency they send out an email every time somebody's promoted, and when I see somebody who deserves that promotion and is the person that I see that can help us right the ship, I send them an email and say, man, we're doing the right thing right here.
Right. We're one step closer.
Yes.
Right, to doing this. So
Because they're not going to have a good Like, it's not going to be easy for him.
No. It's an uphill battle, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, for both of you
They're
guys.
like the salmon that have made it to that next level of the river, swimming upstream.
Somehow you got past the bear and you're still swimming, right? And so anyway, congrats to Trom for getting that promotion. I'm super excited. Another friend of mine, she just got promoted. Couldn't be more excited. Again, hopefully we're headed in the right direction. So congrats. But you also have a question.
Yes.
So
obviously,
he's got a whole. Yeah. He's got a whole like. Okay, number one, there's also something drawn on this piece of paper.
We'll get that later. Yeah. So obviously we know that we are in the presence of a master.
That's crazy.
So
I agree.
So seriously. No, so let's say that I hook up with the Sonola cartel.
Okay.
I secure.
I can tell this question is.
I secure
driving down to Iowa.
Keys of cocaine.
Okay.
Could an average cop get by you? Like, with everything I know, could I successfully? Feel like this.
He wrote this question down an hour ago.
Oh,
we were waiting to ask it.
Yeah,
but could I get
this is a mentor?
Let's say I get 15. In theory, I would not do this, but I purchased 15 keys of coke.
I love that.
Could I get them from the West Coast to the East Coast, and then successfully get the money back?
Okay, yeah, it's a two-way trip, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so this is what is going for me on that.
Or could I subcontract this out to you? And let's say that I will take 60%, kick you 40%. Can you successfully get it from the West Coast to the East Coast in theory?
All legitimate questions.
Or from
every
Laredo,
listener's thinking the same
from the
thing.
South up to the North, Texas.
I love this.
Ohio. I mean, seriously, I would subcontract
His
that
face
out.
right now is baffled by your question.
No, I'm actually...
Because he's talking about, him and his supervisor, all this case law.
I think he's
I
getting
sit there and I think...
Yeah, Trom wrote this down an hour ago and just stopped.
Yeah.
How do I get by him?
Yeah. I bet I could make
this guy.
millions.
Remember, he's staring you down outside.
Yeah. He's outside of his car, arms crossed on the interstate, looking at you.
Yeah, so... What's going in our favor there for law enforcement?
Yes, the answer is yes.
And your wife's back there saying,
Yeah.
more lobster.
Yeah, by the way, Trom's wife has entered the scene and just sitting back, just quietly watching
She is
him.
an unknowing mule.
Yeah.
She's an unwittingly.
She's trying to not listen to what he's saying.
That lobster last night was full of pellets of cocaine that's down your stomach. I'm just waiting for you to pass it as soon as we get home. So to your question, I really think that
as an expert, I assume you could.
I'm just thinking the behavior is going to reveal itself. So the people that work harder to conceal themselves make it easier to reveal themselves, and especially when you're talking about law enforcement officers, I typically see that
we're the worst.
They're morally recognize that when they're doing wrong.
Sure.
And so I think that's going to just really work against you.
Ditch your morals, Trom.
So to the point.
I thought I could.
Hey, you need to run right now.
Well, I got to
hit
old Guzman cannot transport fentanyl.
Exactly.
Sorry, bud. I owe you $15,000.
I shoved this in my prison pocket for no reason.
Screwed that up.
Got a lot of military guys across my career, and it was very interesting because they tried to throw out that military brother.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
And you hope that they're all cut from the similar cloth than us, but. I think a big motivating factor for anybody is greed and money, and everybody falls victim to it, I think. And so I've seen those guys try to traffic drugs and unsuccessfully, and they try to throw out their good guy status of being a military member, and they're just losing their shit the whole time on the car stop. Yeah,
I love that. Hey, you're getting caught, by the way.
Oh, yeah, dude.
I stopped this one guy that had...
I couldn't even make it 10 miles from the border.
If he doesn't get you, I'm PBTing you. I'm PBTing you at the 57.
I stopped a guy that was wearing his BDUs and everything, man. And he drove by me wearing his cap and everything. And so I stopped him, and because he looked like he was shitting a boulder when he went by me. And, man, he just caved. Couldn't hang the questions.
Nope.
And it was the stuff that anybody else would answer with no problem. This guy looked like I was putting a gun to his head. It was miserable for him. But I think the moral turpitude of those people just don't allow them to do this successfully.
Now, you being who you are, you have no moral turpitude. So
I
morally, there's no ethics. You have nothing.
I feel like I could.
You're like, if I could like embody the worst type of human being, I would put it in you.
I feel like I could transport keys of cocaine.
Yeah.
But
I'd stick
that's
to
a
the
risk.
core.
Also, you've
That's a
got
risk.
somebody here.
That's a
Yeah.
risk.
Yeah.
Standing outside the car, and I would roll my U-Haul full of cocaine.
I'm swerving at him.
After
if he's
seeing
staring at me,
it.
I'm like swerving. I'm going to commit a violation right in front of him.
I think it's important if you guys are wanting to make money,
to just do approved overtime.
or at least stick to
And
the
not
goals that all the truck
fentanyl.
stops do. The rest there it is.
Okay. All right.
Not mule
As
fentanyl.
usual, per every podcast, when we get to the end, we got to start a lot of editing, which Smee does the editing, so
Yeah.
thank God I have zero part in this. Okay. So I think we're down to dude, you're coming back.
I'd love to, man, especially when you have AG on here.
Yeah. Do we bring both of those guys on?
I don't.
I would
yeah.
love to.
That would be
It'd
a
be
2-hour
chaos.
podcast.
Yeah, that would be
You
a-
would just have to.
mini
I'm
series.
going to start it and I'm walking off because
Yeah.
those two are. Yeah.
Because what's so fascinating about AG is like,
He's an animal. He's a caveman.
dude, he's just absolutely
Psycho.
legit in every arena,
In a
and,
good
and,
way.
and he's just extremely humble. But I watched True Grit with him, the new one,
Oh my God.
and I didn't think that was a comedy until I watched it with him,
Yeah.
and I was just, dude, it was great.
He's a caveman, man. He's something else.
He's got the straightest chin too, guys. If anybody's never seen this
Yes.
dude,
The jawline of this guy.
I use his chin to draw templates for accident reports. It's like, I need your chin to draw a straight line. Put it down here, AG.
Would you agree? He is a Family Guy. You a Family Guy fan?
Yeah,
He is
absolutely.
Quagmire's chin in real life.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah.
So maybe we schedule that because he's agreed to be on it.
Yeah.
You hold him to it.
Yeah, and I'm supposed to call him while you're on here, but I don't want to do that to you. So I say we get you two together and get on that.
He's one of my favorites. I watched that guy on a SWAT call one time get choked out by a guy with samurai swords, and
As one would.
it was a great story. And then he got cut in that whole melee also, and then we had all blood contamination. It was just a big mess, and that was the first call of the night. Then we had another one right after.
Of
that.
course, yeah.
So it was chaos all that night, but he's a jam up person. If that was somebody that you could replicate multiple times over
Yes.
to make cops,
Yep.
I'd do that guy.
Absolutely.
I need to rephrase that.
Yeah, you shouldn't
Yeah,
say I would.
I don't
do
know.
that.
That's
I'm
gonna
going
be
to stick to my
soundbite.
statement. I would do that
It's
guy.
2023. You can do that guy if you
I
want.
would do that guy, and I would replicate him so I could do him multiple times. But he's married to a saint of a wife as well. He has amazing kids. He's so articulate. He's so principled.
Yeah.
And he's not so rigid in thought that he can't hear other people's opinions and come up with a solution. That's a guy right there that if I could say let's just throw him to the top, let's do it right now.
Yes.
And I'd be happy to salute him for the rest of my career.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna piggyback on that. I've worked with him for 5 years. Is that right? Yeah. And I cannot say there's very many people I would agree with what you just said.
Yeah.
And that guy is something else. And yeah, I'm gonna work with him. I think we get both at the same time. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, this could be chaotic.
A lot of
It'd be a good
editing.
time.
A lot of editing.
Yeah.
Probably.
But mainly just over conspiracy theories. 'cause
Yeah,
He
yeah.
just wouldn't want people to know about it.
Yeah. All right. So we are at, oh my God, we're at an hour and 40 minutes. We try to target 50. All right, Smee, last words.
No, it was great. It was a good episode. We only talked about the.
I mean, scratch the surface.
Just
Dude, I've got a whole
scratch
list
the
of
surface,
stuff to talk to you about.
Good conversation.
Yeah, love it.
That's
Trom?
my final thought.
Guest host, anything?
I'm still convinced that I could mule.
Yeah, you're getting across.
I'm as long as I don't cross this guy.
Yeah. As long
I
as
feel
he's
like
busy.
as long as I avoid this state,
Yeah. We'll just
I
go
feel
to
like I'll just go to
Oklahoma,
like
come up.
Iowa and they won't catch me one bit.
I'm just going to say to that point, I think the only way that you can get across me on this is if you keister it. So,
But like in
So-
like a,
so
a
the-
big
so-
girthy.
Yeah.
So the long
just like-
stop is me just driving down the road.
that's what I'm saying. It's like you're probably like an Nalgene bottle right up into the keister there and
So you have a
into the
Dasani
prison
bottle
pocket.
up your
Yeah. And then at that point in time, bro, I've won the war on drugs.
it's already in my
your
butt.
keister. Yeah.
God. All right. Greg, I have no last words other than I'm going to
that's it
sign
for me.
out. Greg, any last words, brother?
No, I just think that the takeaway for this is, we try to focus on leadership, But leadership is action and not position. I think that each one of us needs to understand that we have a role in that, and that we can change things from where we're at. And I'm not high in our agency at all, but I still firmly believe that we have the ability to direct the way our agency goes by the actions that we do on every frickin' contact. And that's where we need to understand that our leadership is the most important. It's not whoever's wearing the chief's badge or the colonel's badge or anything like that. It's us out there doing the work. And I think actually our in my agency our number one guy would agree with that. That's where it matters. And so I just encourage everybody to continue to do that.
Awesome. I got nothing to say.
You don't have any final thoughts?
No, I got no final thoughts. Normally I'm full of final thoughts, other than Trom keystering things.
Yeah.
I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, I think we went from
Have I keystered something in the bathroom?
keystering. Yeah, have you? Yeah.
No,
A small lotion
We went
bottle?
from his girth
Yeah.
to leadership.
very healthy prostate.
Yeah.
Very healthy prostate.
Yeah.
So,
Very good. I've checked it. There's also an image on his piece of paper that
His
I probably should
note-taking,
Or
yeah.
it would be extra editing. So, last thing, Smee, thanks for being here. Trom, thanks for being here. Can't wait for the policeman's ball tonight. Greg, dude, I've been pumped about this for a while.
Yeah.
You can ask me.
Good.
I've been talking about it. You guys were awesome. Other than that, both of you are coming back. And that's all I got.
let's do it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you.
And peace, Bird. Hope you're not dead.